The heels strike marble with a rhythm too sharp to be elegant. Click, click, click. Each step echoes up the spine of the building and into Elena's chest. New York has a way of amplifying everything: ambition, hunger, fear. Especially fear. She pauses in front of the mirror. Breath tightens. In. Ow. Too fast. The mirror is unforgiving tonight. It doesn't blur. It doesn't lie. It catalogs. The fine lines at the corners of her eyes look deeper under hotel lighting. The skin along her jaw doesn't pull back the way it used to. She leans closer, squints, lifts her chin, an old reflex, practiced, almost professional. I'm tired, she whispers as if exhaustion could excuse time. Behind her, the room is quiet. No music, no city noise, just the low hum of the building breathing around her. She hears her own pulse in her ears, loud and accusatory. In New York, aging is not neutral. It's a verdict. She remembers the way people used to look at her. The lingering half second too long. The eyes that followed her across rooms, not because she demanded attention but because she had it. Youth had wrapped itself around her like glass, clear, admired, fragile. Glass breaks. The sound comes suddenly. A sharp crack. Then another. She doesn't realize she's done it until her hand stings. A spiderweb fracture spreads across the mirror where her ring connected to hard. The reflection fractures with either face split into versions of itself. Younger, older, distorted. She exhales, shaky. The betrayal didn't come with messages or lipstick stains. It came quietly. A dinner weeks ago. A restaurant she chose because the lighting was kind. Across the table, her husband's eyes slid past her just slightly. Not rude. Not cruel. Worse, they moved the way people look at furniture they've owned too long. Still useful. Still there. But already replaced in their minds. That look stayed with her. It crawled under her skin. It whispered late at night, early in the morning, in elevators and fitting rooms. You are no longer current. Asterisk. She presses her forehead to the cool glass. The cracked mirror chills her skin. Tiny flakes fall to the sink. Tink, tink, like ice. Her voice, when it comes, is low, measured, practiced after years of public appearances and private negotiations. I can fix this. That sentence has saved her before. It built careers, bought forgiveness, opened doors. She reaches for a tissue, wraps it around her bleeding finger with care bordering on reverence. Blood stains white paper quickly. Too quickly. Proof that the body still insists on telling the truth. From the bathroom, the city looks distant, reduced to light and geometry. She imagines herself from above, another woman in another tower, counting years like losses. She straightens her back, squares her shoulders. The old instincts snap into place. If time is a thief, she will negotiate. If age is a crime, she will pay the fine. The mirror holds her fractured face in silence. And somewhere between the cracks, something inside Elena begins to splinter too. She doesn't know yet whether it's breaking or finally opening. The elevator down feels longer than it should. Elena watches the numbers light up like a countdown. 1912, 6 ground. A doorman nods. Polite. Trained. His eyes flicker just on see toward the bruising near her finger. The way she keeps the hand tucked in tight. She angles her body to hide it, the same way she angles her face in photos. Always adjusting. Always managing what the world is allowed to see. Outside, the city air is cold and metallic. A taxi splashes through a shallow puddle. Somewhere, a siren rises and falls like a bad thought you can't stop replaying. Her phone vibrates. A calendar reminder, clean and cruel, consult 3 p.m., no address. Just a pin dropped on a street that doesn't belong in glossy magazines. 2 blocks off a boulevard where people spend more on a handbag than her mother once made in a month. She walks anyway. The building is narrow, forgettable. A place you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. No signage. No lobby perfume. Just a buzz-in system and a security camera that stares too hard. Inside, the hallway smells like bleach pretending to be clean. The lights are too bright. The walls are too quiet. A door clicks open. A young woman in a fitted white coat smiles at Elena like they're sharing a secret. Elena, she says softly, warm as honey, right on time. The waiting room is small, minimalist, designed to feel expensive without being traceable. There's a white sofa no one sits on, a bowl of green apples no one eats, and a diffuser pumping out a lavender scent so sweet it almost makes Elena nauseous. From behind another door, she hears it. A machine, a steady mechanical whir, then a soft electronic beep, precise, indifferent. The sound hooks something in her, like a lullaby for people who don't want to feel. The woman offers tea, not in a paper cup, in porcelain. The cup clinks delicately against the saucer. A small sound, a calming one. Elena's hands tremble anyway. She sips. The tea is too hot, but she doesn't flinch. Pain is easier than panic. A man enters, late 40s, hair too perfect to be real, smile too practiced to be kind. He doesn't introduce himself with a last name. He doesn't need to. He holds Elena's face gently, like he's inspecting a sculpture. Beautiful structure, he murmurs. You've taken care of yourself. It lands like an insult dressed as praise. Elena swallows. I need to look like I feel, she sighs. And how do you feel? His voice is quiet, clinical but intimate, like a confessional. She thinks of that look across the dinner table, the eyes that moved past her. Replaceable. His smile doesn't change, but his eyes sharpen, calculating. Then we don't do maintenance, he says. We do reset. He turns to a tablet, slides images across the screen, a jawline pulled tighter, a brow smoothed flatter, skin made blank, almost childlike. He talks in measurements and units, in tiny numbers that somehow decide a person's worth. Botulinum toxin, he says like poetry. A little here, here, and here. Elena watches the screen, watches the future being edited in real time. Her mind whispers 30 again, 30 again, 30 again. How much? She asks as if she's buying a ticket back. He doesn't hesitate. 50,000. The number lands in her chest. Heavy, then strangely relieving, because a price tied is something she understands. A transaction, a solution, and the show, she adds, voice low, almost ashamed of how badly she wants it. The surgeon's assistant glides in, tablet in hand. Her smile is bright enough to blind. We can make calls, she says. We can smooth things out. The right donation, the right introductions. Elena stares at the porcelain cup, at the tea trembling in a tiny circle near the rim. Her reflection is there, blurred in the dark liquid. Not crisp like a mirror. Softer, more forgiving. For a brief second, she sees herself the way she might have looked at 25, a hungry, certain, sharp. Then the machine behind the door whirs again. A reminder that softness is temporary. Elena signs her name on a digital pad. The stylus feels to light in her fingers, like the weight of her decision is being absorbed by technology. The assistant squeezes her shoulder gently. You're going to be stunning, she whispers, almost maternal. Elena nods, but her throat tightens, because she's not paying for beauty. She's paying for permission. Permission to be wanted. Permission to take up space. Permission to not be discarded. As she's led down the hall, the door opens, a head sterile light spilling out like a stage spotlight. And somewhere inside that bright, clean room, Elena feels the beginning of a new craving. Not for youth, for control. The first thing Elena hears is the train. Not music, not applause, not the polite lies of a penthouse party. A long animal howl cuts through the station, steel on steel, a sound that doesn't flatter anyone. It simply is. The platform vibrates under her feet. The air smells like cold metal and coffee that's been reheated too many times. She keeps her hood up, sunglasses on, even indoors. In the glass of a vending machine, she catches a glimpse of herself and flinches. Her face is swollen in a way no camera filter can forgive. Purple bruising blooms along her jaw like a storm cloud. Her lips look unfamiliar, overfilled, slightly off, as if her mouth is wearing someone else's memory. The assistant at the clinic said, "This is normal. It's temporary." Asterisk, temporary is what they promise when they want you to stop asking questions. Elena clutches her ticket. One way. New York to Maine. A route she chose because it feels like the opposite of everything that broke her. The train arrives with a hiss, doors sighing open like a secret being allowed out. Inside, the seats are worn. The carpet has seen too many shoes, too many spills, too many quiet exits. She sits by the window, turning her face slightly away from the aisle. A habit, a shield. Across from her, a teenage boy taps on his phone. He glances up on his eyes flick to her, bruising then away again. Fast. Not cruel, just startled. Elena's stomach twists. She pulls the hood lower. Her voice, when she speaks to the conductor, comes out muffled. "Thank you," she says too soft. The train jerks forward. New York slides backward in pieces, brick, neon, glass, scaffolding, steam from street grates like the city exhaling. Elena watches it shrink until it becomes just another skyline. Just another place where a woman can disappear without anyone noticing. The further north they go, the quieter it gets. Concrete gives way to bare trees. Billboards fade into long stretches of dark woods. The light changes to less sharp, less designed, more honest. Her phone buzzes. A message from her husband's lawyer. Another from a producer who used to call her icon. Another from a woman she barely remembers, asking if she's okay. Elena turns the phone off. A small click. A small mercy. She leans her head against the window. The glass is cold. It presses back, solid and indifferent. Her face aches under the bandages. Beneath the swelling, she can feel the tightness of new skin pulling against old muscle. It's not pain exactly. It's restraint. Like her own expression has been put on a leash. She closes her eyes. For the first time in months, she notices sound without turning it into judgment. The soft rattle of the train. The whisper of fabric shifting as someone crosses their legs. A paper cup crinkling. A woman to rose back stirring sugar into teaspoon against cardboard. A quick repetitive tap. 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 Elena finds herself listening the way she used to listen as a child, before mirrors taught her to watch herself instead. The train rocks her gently, like a hand on the back. She breathes slower, When she wakes, the air looks different. Gray sky, salt in the wind, and beyond the window water. Not the Hudson, not the polished edges of Manhattan. This water is wilder, less explained. The station is small. She steps down onto the platform, and the cold hits her like truth. Sharp, clean, almost rude. She pulls her scarf tighter, but the wind finds its way anyway, sliding under fabric, touching skin without asking permission. A man at the station offers directions without looking too closely at her face. His voice is rough with sleep or cigarettes. Rentals up that way, he sighs, nodding toward a road lined with pines. You'll hear the ocean before you see it. Elena drags her suitcase along gravel. The wheels protest. The house is older than she expected. Paint peeling, porch steps uneven. A place that doesn't try to impress. Inside, it smells like wood and dust and something faintly sweet, maybe old pine resin trapped in the walls. She sets her suitcase down and stands still. No ringing phone. No elevator music. No cameras. Just silence. And then, as if the world is testing whether she can handle something real, the ocean speaks. A steady hush beyond the windows. Waves rolling in, pulling back, rolling in again. Like breath. Like time. Like a promise that nothing stays perfect, and nothing stays broken forever. Elena walks to the sink, fills the kettle, and turns the burner on. When the flame catches, it makes a small intimate sound. A soft whoomph. She pours water into a chipped mug, lets the heat rise into her face. The steam fogs her sunglasses. For once, she doesn't wipe it away. She sits by the window, listening to waves she can't control, holding warmth she didn't have to buy. And somewhere in her chest, under the swelling and the shame, she feels something unfamiliar begin to wait. Not confidence, not youth, just space. A small, quiet space where she can hear herself again. Morning in Maine doesn't arrive like it does in New York. It doesn't slam the curtains open. It doesn't demand you be seen. It seeps in slowly than light over gray water, the hush of waves smoothing the edges of the day. Elena sits at the small kitchen table with a mug between her hands, feeling the warmth travel into her fingers. The kettle had whistled earlier, sharp, then fading like a warning that softened into permission. She doesn't reach for her phone. She doesn't look for a mirror. She listens. The house creaks in places, old wood shifting as if it's remembering. Outside, a gull calls once, impatient. The ocean answers with its steady, breath-like pull. Then another sound. A scraping, rhythmic, dried. Not from the water. From somewhere close. Elena freezes, mug halfway to her mouth. The sound comes again, a long, deliberate sh, then a pause, then sh again. Like something being shaved down. Like time sanding the world into shape. She stands quietly and walks to the front window. Across the yard near the small shed, a man is working. No music. No earbuds. No performance. Is bent over a plank of wood set on sawhorses, pushing a hand plane along its surface with patient force. Each stroke peels off a thin curl that falls in soft spirals to the ground. Shh. The sound is oddly intimate. Elena's eyes linger on the shaving, show they're imperfect but beautiful, like ribbon. Like something fragile that doesn't pretend to be permanent. The man straightens and wipes his forehead with the back of his wrist. Is tall, broad-shouldered in a way that isn't gym-made. His hands look like they've earned every line on them. His shirt is faded. His jeans are spotted with sawdust, salt, and work. He turns his head toward her window, as if he sensed her watching. Elena steps back instinctively. Too late. A knock lands on the front door a moment later. Not aggressive. Not hesitant. Just factual. Elena hesitates, then pulls her hood up, tightens her scarf. She opens the door a crack. Cold air slips in. The man stands on the porch holding a tape measure and a pencil behind his ear. His eyes flick to her covered face, then away. He doesn't try to read her like a headline. Morning, he says. His voice is low, rough around the edges like driftwood. I'm Julian. I'm fixing the dock for Mistress Porter next door. Your landlord said I might need to access the side path. Elena nods without speaking. Her throat feels strange, tight from disuse, from secrecy. Julian waits, patient. No salesman smile. No eager warmth. Just calm presence. She finds her voice. Yeah, sure. It comes out hoarse, almost embarrassed. Julian's gaze settles briefly on her hand, sway she grips the door. The small tremor, the bandage on her finger. You okay? He asks. No drama, no curiosity dressed up as concern. Elena stiffens. I'm fine. It's automatic. A reflex polished by years of being seen. Julian doesn't push. He nods once, as if fine is just another kind of weather. All right, he says. I'll keep out of your way. He turns to leave, then pauses. Actually, he adds, almost as an afterthought. Could use a hand for 2 minutes. If you're up for it. Elena's stomach drops. A hand? Julian gestures toward the plank he's working on. I'm gluing a seam. Need someone to hold it steady while it sets. It's stubborn. The word makes Elena bristle. Stubborn. Like her face. Like her fear. Like her life refusing to stay smooth. She looks down at her hood, scarf, oversized coat. A fortress. No, she says too quickly. I can't. Julian watches her for a beat. Not judging, just seeing the refusal. Okay, he says simply. Then, softer, if you change your mind, it'll be there. He steps off the porch, boots thudding on wood, solid, honest sounds. He walks back across the yard without looking over his shoulder. Elena stands frozen in the doorway, cold air wrapping around her ankles. She closes the door, leans her forehead against it. In New York, people begged you to be useful so they could take from you. Here, a man asked for help the way someone asks for a lie, casual, human, no hidden hooks. Her eyes drift to the window again. Julian bends over the wood, hands steady. The plane moves. Another curl falls. Shh! Elena's chest tightens with something she can't name. She thinks of her own body, how she tried to plane it down, sand it smooth, erase every mark like it was damage. But the wood doesn't look ashamed of its grain. The grain is the point. She swallows slowly, unwrapping her scarf. Then she surprises herself. She opens the door again. The cold hits her face, clean and bracing. Julian looks up as she steps onto the porch. Elena walks toward him, hood still up, but her hands visible now bare, human, imperfect. 2 minutes, she says. Julian's mouth lifts, just slightly. That's all I need, he replies. And for the first time since the mirror shattered, Elena steps toward something real, something rough, unfinished, and honest enough to hold her steady. The wood is heavier than Elena expects. Julian sets the plank across the sawhorses and gestures for her to hold one end. Her hands find the surface, coarse, warm from the sun, alive with ridges. It's nothing like the sleek glass and polished stone she's used to. This wood doesn't beg to be admired. It just exists, bearing its own story openly. Grip it like you mean it, Julian says, not unkind. His voice has that grounded, honest, no frills, no softening. Elena tightens her fingers. A thin line of sawdust coats her knuckles. The dust sticks to the dry places of her skin, highlighting what she would normally hide. Julian leans close to the seam, running a fingertip along the split. The crack is long but clean, the kind that looks like it happened slowly, not violently. This boat? Elena asks before she can stop herself. Julian glances over his shoulder. Belonged to my father's friend. He left it to rot behind his shed after his wife died. Said he couldn't stand looking at it. Elena nods, as if she understands the logic of abandoning something because it reminds you of time. Julian reaches for a small jar, unscrews the lid. The scent rises, earthy. Resin, glue, something ancient and practical. He brushes it into the seam with slow strokes. The bristles make a faint whisper against the wood. A soft, repetitive sound that settles Elena's mind. Like the ocean, but smaller, more intimate. Julian fits the two edges together, presses firmly, then clamps them. Metal tightens with a squeal, then a click. Now he says we wait. Elena doesn't move. She holds the plank as if it might run away. Julian wipes his hands on a rag and nods toward the old boat hull, nearby, upside down, weathered, scarred. You ever see people fix broken pottery in Japan? He asks. Elena shakes her head. They call it kintsugi. He says the word carefully, like it deserves respect. Instead of hiding the crack, they fill it with lacquer mixed with gold. Not to pretend it never broke. To make the break part of the beauty. Elena stares at the boat's battered edge. The words land somewhere in her chest, heavy and quiet. Julian continues, not performing. Just speaking the way someone speaks, when they've held a truth long enough to stop decorating it. Wood's like that too, he says. People think the prettiest boards are the smooth ones. The ones with no knots, no rings. But that's not how trees grow. He picks up a cut slice of piney, an old cross-section he's kept, maybe as a reference, maybe as a reminder. He runs a thumb along the rings. These lines, he says, they're years, drought years, storm years, years it had to fight for light. You sand it down too much, you erase the story. Elena's grip falters slightly. She looks down at her own hands, at the tiny veins and faint creases that no amount of moisturizer can fully hide. Stories make you look old, she mutters, almost to herself. Julian doesn't laugh, doesn't correct her like a therapist. He just looks at her, eyes steady. Old isn't the problem, he says. Unlived is. The words hit like a quiet slap. Elena's throat tightens. She turns her face away, instinctively hiding, but the hood slips back a little. Cool air touches the swelling near her cheek. The bruise feels like a confession. Julian doesn't stare. He keeps his gaze on the bow, giving her space to stay in control. You ever notice, he says, how light works on water? Elena blinks. What? Julian nods toward the ocean beyond the trees. Water's never smooth. Not really. Always moving. Always wrinkling. And that's exactly why it catches light. Elena's breath hitches. Wrinkles. Light. Her mind flashes to the clinic, bright sterile bulbs, faces smoothed into sameness, the quiet hum of machines. That world sells a lie that beauty is the absence of history. Dear, Julian is saying the opposite. The clamp creaks as the wood settles. Elena holds steady, but her thoughts don't. She hears herself, as if from far away, saying the words she's said 1,000 times in 1,000 mirrors. I look tired. I look old. I look ruined. And then, for the first time, she hears how vicious it sounds. Not objective. Not factual. A verdict. Julian reaches for a thermos beside him. Unscrews the cap. The faint scent of black tea drifts out. He pours it into 2 dented metal cups. The stream is soft, steady, a small, calming ribbon of sound. He hands one to Elena without ceremony. She takes it, fingers brushing the warm metal. The heat grounds her. Julian takes a sip, then nods toward the seam. See, he says, it'll hold. Not because it was perfect. Because it's been through something. Elena looks at the crack, now clamped shut, glue hidden inside like a promise. She feels her eyes stagnant with sadness exactly, but with something sharper. Recognition. She swallows. Why do you fix things? She asks quietly. Julian thinks for a moment, then shrugs. Because they're still here, he says. That's usually enough. Elena lowers her gaze to the tea, to the faint tremble of liquid in the cup. Her reflection is there again, at crisp, not edited. Just a shadow in warm brown. She sees swelling, bruises, and underneath a face that has survived. A face with history. She lifts the cup and lets the heat fog her senses, letting the sound of the ocean and the whisper of wood shavings fill the spaces where her old obsession used to scream. And in that quiet, a question forms, small, dangerous, honest. If cracks are where light gets in, why had she spent her whole life trying to seal every one? The bathroom in the rental house is small and plain white tile, a mirror that's slightly warped at the edges, a shower head that squeaks when you turn it. Nothing here flatters. Nothing here sells. Elena stands in front of the sink anyway. She doesn't lean in this time. She doesn't hunt for flaws like a detective. She just listens. The ocean is a low hush through the window. The house settles with quiet creaks. Somewhere outside, a gull calls once and goes silent, like it remembered there's no audience. Elena turns on the faucet. Water rushes into the basin, loud at first, then steadier, softer. It fills the room with that clean, blunt sound that doesn't care who you are. She cups her hands and splashes her face. Cold hits swelling. She winces. Then she splashes again. She reaches for the corner of the bandage at her cheek. The tape is stubborn, clinging like an old belief. For a moment, her fingers hover. In New York, she would have waited for someone else to do this. A nurse, a specialist, a person paid to touch her gently while calling her brave. Here, it's just her. She peels. The tape makes a small tearing sound, very intimate. The gauze pulls away, and her skin underneath feels raw, almost newborn. It's not beautiful. Not yet. Maybe not ever, in the way she used to mean. Elena breathes through her mouth. The air tastes like salt and toothpaste, and something faintly metallic, fear. She removes another strip. Another soft rip. The mirror catches pieces of her face emerging, bruising fading to yellow at the edges, swelling still puffed along her jawline, a lip that looks slightly uneven. Her expression sits strangely on her new features, like her emotions are renting a room that doesn't fit. A wave of panic rises hot. The old instinct screams, fix it. Hide it. Schedule something. Pay someone to erase it. Asterisk. Elena grips the sink until her knuckles pale. Then she hears something outside Julian's plane cutting into wood. Sht. Asterisk. A pause. Sht. Asterisk. The sound pulls her back into her body. Not her face. Her body. She turns on the shower. Water slams the tile, loud and relentless. Steam blooms. The room fills with heat. Elena steps under the stream, lets it hit her shoulders, her scalp, her cheeks. It stings the tender places, but it also rinses something away. She tilts her head back, mouth open, letting the water drown the nose in her mind. When she steps out, her skin is pink alive. She wraps herself in a towel that smells like old cotton and detergent, not fancy hotel lavender. She looks in the mirror again. Without the bandages, there's nowhere for her shame to hide. Her eyes meet her own for a beat longer than comfortable. And then quietly, almost like she's testing a new language, speaks. I'm not ruined. The words land awkwardly, like a dress that hasn't been tailored. But they're there. She dries her hair and leaves the bathroom without rechecking her face. That alone feels like rebellion. In the kitchen, she makes tea. The kettle warms with a low hiss. The water begins to tremble before it boils. She pours slowly, listening to the thin stream against porcelain, soft, soothing, steady. The cup warms her hands the way it did yesterday. The way it didn't in New York, where warmth always came with strings. On the table, there's a stack of books the rental owner left behind. Old paperbacks. A hardback with a cracked spine. Titles Elena used to love before her life became a sequence of events and outfits. She picks one up. The pages smell like dust and time. She flips through, and a small slip of paper falls out, a dried pressed leaf, brown and delicate, saved on purpose. Elena's fingers pause over it. Someone once looked at a leaf turning brown and thought, this is worth keeping. Asterisk. She sits, opens the book, starts reading. At first, the words slide off her mind. Her attention is restless, still trained to chase reflection. But she forces herself to stay. A sentence catches, then another. Her breathing slows, syncing with the ocean's rhythm beyond the walls. Hours pass without her noticing. When hunger finally nudges her, she stands and realizes something startling. She hasn't looked in a mirror in hours. Not once. The thought comes like a small, bright shock followed by a strange relief. Like taking off heels you didn't realize were cutting off your circulation. Later, she walks outside. Julian is by the shed again, hands moving with calm certainty. He glances up as she approaches, towel-dried hair loose around her shoulders, face bare. No foundation, no contour, just skin, still healing. Elena feels exposed to real. Julian's eyes meet hers, then drift to the plank he's holding, as if her face is no more shocking than the weather. Morning, he says. Elena nods. Morning. A beat of silence. Julian sets his tool down. How's it feeling? She knows what he means. He could mean her face, or her life, or the choice she's making without saying it. Elena exhales. Like I stopped chasing, she says carefully. Julian's mouth lifts a fraction, not quite a smile. Yeah, he says, chasing go where grooves in you. Elena looks at his hand scared, capable. She thinks of wood grain, carved by years, made visible by pressure. Grooves. She touches the corner of her eye, where a faint line lives. Not erased, not filled. For the first time, she doesn't name it ugly. She names it honest. Back inside, her phone sits dark on the counter. She doesn't turn it on. Instead, she pours another cup of tea, opens her book again, and listens to the ocean speak in steady breaths. And slowly, Elena begins to understand something that no clinic ever sold her. A face is not a resum. A wrinkle is not a failure. It's evidence. Evidence that you stayed long enough to be shaped by living and that you didn't disappear just because time tried to make you. The knock doesn't sound like Julian's. Julian's is steady, one firm rap, then patience. This one is sharper. Two quick hits like punctuation. Elena freezes with her book open, tea cooling beside her. The ocean hush keeps going, indifferent. The house creaks once, as if it's warning her. Another knock. Harder. She sets the book down. Her palms are suddenly damp. Old instincts flare. Fix your hair, check your face, control the angle. She doesn't. Elena walks to the door as she is. Barefaced, sweater, socks on cold wood floors. She opens it. Her ex-husband stands on the porch like he never learned how to be anywhere without owning it. Dark coat, expensive watch, the kind of polish that looks better in a city than in sea air. He smells faintly of cologne and airports. His gaze lands on her face, and he can't help it. His mouth tightens, a reflex of disappointment. Jesus, he says quietly, you really let yourself go. The words are meant to snap her back into line, to make her scramble for the version of herself he preferred. Elena feels the sting, but it doesn't spread the way it used to. It hits then stops like a wave meeting rock. She steps aside. Come in, she says. He hesitates as if the house might infect him with simplicity. Then he walks in, eyes scanning the room, books, mugs, a throw blanket on the chair. No art on the walls, no curated luxury, just living. He pulls out a folder. We need to sign, he says brisk. I want this done before the end of the month. Elena nods and sits at the table. The chair scrapes softly, honest sound against old floorboards. He doesn't sit. He stands over her, the way he used to stand behind her in photos, close enough to look supportive, positioned to look in control. He opens the folder and slides papers toward her. Divorce documents, clean fonts, cold language. The end of an entire decade reduced to checkboxes. Elena picks up the pen. Her ex watches her hand. Then he speaks again, unable to resist. You know, he says, bow slow, it's not just the face. It's the whole thing. You used to care. You used to try. Elena pauses. She looks at the paper, then at him. For a second she sees him clearly in it as a villain, not as a monster. Just a man terrified of time, trying to purchase safety by surrounding himself with things that don't look like they've lived. He keeps talking, softer now, like he's offering her a way back. If you get help, he says, I don't know, put in a word. People remember you. But this? His eyes flick over her again. This isn't you. Elena sets the pen down. Slowly, she folds her hands around her mug, feeling the warmth through ceramic. Her voice, when it comes, is calm, almost gentle. This is me, she sighs. He laughs once, sharp and dismissive. No, you're older. You're not the woman I married. Elena leans back slightly. She doesn't flinch. She doesn't raise her volume. You're right, she sighs. I'm not. That lands. He blinks. Elena continues, measured, precise. You married the version of me who apologized for taking up space. The version who believed love had an expiration date. She tilts her head just enough. You married my fear. His jaw tightens. That's not fair. Elena's mouth lifts small, almost pitying. There isn't the point, she says. Truth is, outside the ocean rolls on. A wave hits the shore and pulls back, like breath leaving a body that's finally unclenched. Her ex shifts, irritated by her steadiness. So what, you're enlightened now? He scoffs. Elena looks at him with a stillness that makes the room feel larger. I'm free, she says. And it scares you. He opens his mouth, but nothing clean comes out. Just a frustrated exhale. Elena slides the sign pages toward him. I used to think wrinkles were defeat, she sighs, voice quiet. Now I think they're proof I survived what tried to shrink me. He stares at her, searching for the old Elena, the one who would crumble, the one who would bargain. He doesn't find her. He grabs the folder, stiff. You'll regret this, he mutters, already turning toward the door. Elena doesn't stop him. At the threshold, he pauses, as if waiting for her to chase him down the porch the way she used to chase approval. Elena stays seated, hands around her mug, breath steady. He leaves. The door closes with a soft click. Elena sits in the silence that follows. She expects emptiness. Instead, she feels space. She lifts her mug, takes a sip of cooling tea, and watches her reflection tremble on the surface. Not smooth, not perfect. Real. And for the first time, it's enough. New York greets Elena the way it always does, bright, impatient. The city's sound is a constant shimmer, tires hissing on wet asphalt, a distant horn, a train rumbling somewhere underground like a restless thought. Even inside the car, the nose presses against the windows, trying to get in. Elena watches her reflection in the dark glass. Not to inspect, not to correct, just to notice. Her face still carries faint lines, small shadows, the kind of texture cameras use to erase. Tonight, she lets it stay. At the venue, the air smells like perfume and electricity. Backstage is a controlled storm, stylists moving fast, hangers clacking, fabric whispering, heels tapping like nervous hearts. Someone laughs too loudly, someone swears softly. A steamer exhales against a dress, and under it all drums. A steady beat pumping through the floor, through bone. Not romantic, not warm. A pulse, a challenge. Elena steps into the chaos without shrinking. A young assistant with a headset looks up, startled for a fraction of a second, then professional again. Elena Voss? She asks. Elena nods. The assistant scans her clipboard like she's checking if Elena is real. You're early, she says. I don't like rushing, Elena replies. It's a small sentence, but it lands differently than it used to. No apology, no pleading, just preference. A rack of clothing rolls past, organic linen, recycled silk, undyed cotton. No glittering armor, no stiff perfection. The collection is quiet, intentional. A campaign about sustainability, about time, about not consuming yourself into nothing. A stylist approaches, younger than Elena by decades, eyes sharp but not cruel. We're not doing heavy makeup, the stylist says, almost bracing for resistance. The concept is skin. Real skin. Elena's mouth lifts slightly. Good, she says. The stylist pauses, thrown off, then nods, relieved. They brush Elena's hair back, not into something severe, but into something clean. A little oil on her lips, a touch of powder where she shines. Nothing that erases, only enough to keep the lights from turning her into glare. As they work, Elena hears murmurs nearby. Is that her? I thought she disappeared. God, she looks different. Different used to feel like danger. Now it feels like arrival. A designer steps in, woman in her 40s, calm eyes, hands ink-stained from sketching. She doesn't gush. She doesn't flatter. She looks at Elena like she's looking at a story. Thank you for doing this, the designer says quietly. We needed someone who doesn't look like a lie. Elena holds the designer's gaze. I spent a long being one, she replies. A beat. The designer nods, understanding without asking for details. They drape the garment over Elena's shoulders, a long coat in undyed wool, simple lines, beautiful because it doesn't beg. It hangs on her body like it trusts her. Elena touches the fabric. It's textured, slightly raw-like wood grain. Like life. A stage manager calls out, 2 minutes. The models line up. Elena stands among them, taller than some, older than all. She feels their glance, quick, curious. One girl with glossy skin and nervous hands looks at Elena like she's staring into her own future. Elena doesn't smile at her in a performative way. She just gives a small nod. Not reassurance. Respect. The drums intensify. The curtain trembles. In the darkness before the runway, Elena hears the crowd, a sea of voices, cameras clicking, that hungry New York anticipation. Insolence. A spotlight cuts. The first model steps out. Applause ripples, then settles into that particular fashion show hush, the audience watching like judges, like predators, like worshippers. Elena waits. Her name isn't announced. It doesn't need to be. The stage manager touches her elbow. A simple cue. Elena steps forward. The moment her foot hits the runway, the lights find her net flattering, not gentle. Bright enough to expose anything she tries to hide. She doesn't hide. She walks the way Julian walks across a yard, steady, unhurried, not asking permission from the ground. Cameras start clicking faster. A murmur moves through the audience, and not excitement, not critique. Recognition. Elena's face doesn't perform youth. It performs presence. Her eyes scan forward, but she's not searching for approval. She's holding the room the way a tree holds its rings, quietly, undeniably. Halfway down the runway, she feels it, the old pull to tighten her stomach, lift her chin, become an image. She lets the impulse pass. Instead, she breathes. She thinks of wood grain, how it shows every season. She thinks of Wrinkles show, they catch light like water does. At the end of the runway, she turns. For a brief second, she sees herself reflected in a wall of phones, dozens of screens capturing her from every angle, trying to freeze her into something consumable. Elena meets the glow of those screens with a stillness that refuses to be owned. Then she walks back into the dark. Backstage swallows her again, hangers clacking, voices returning, the hum of motion. But something has changed. The room feels quieter around her, as if even New York has lowered its volume to listen. A young model whispers as Elena passes, almost involuntary. "You're not scared." Elena stops, looks at her. Her voice is soft, but it lands like truth. "I was," she says, "until I realized fear is just time asking for a price. And I don't pay that anymore." The drums fade into applause. Elena stands still for a breath, the coat warm on her shoulders, her skin unedited under harsh lights. And for the first time in her life, she understands the runway isn't a place to prove you're untouched. It's a place to prove you're still standing, cracks, grain, and all. The first invitation arrives on thick paper that feels almost antique in Elena's hands. Not a nightclub, not a fashion week after party. A panel, a talk, a room full of women and men with silver at their temples and questions in their eyes. She reads the headline twice, as if expecting it to disappear. The Silver Generation: Power, Presence, Possibility in New York. Silver used to mean a discount, a category, a polite way of saying past your prime. Now it looks like a crown. Elena stands in her apartment a week later, looking at a dress laid out on her bed. Simple black, no desperate sparkle, no sculpting shape hair. She runs her hand over the fabric, then stops. Old Elena would have asked, "Does this make me look younger?" This Elena asks, "Can I breathe in it? Can I tell the truth in it?" At the venue, the lights are softer than the runway lights. The air smells like tea and books and polished wood. Not perfume, not panic. Behind the stage, a volunteer offers her a cup. "Chamomile," the woman says. "It helps with nerves." Elena takes it. The cup warms her palms. The tea's steam rises slow, gentle. She listens to the faint sound of liquid settling, the tiny clink of porcelain's small ASMR moments, that calm her better than any compliment ever did. A young coordinator approaches, phone in hand, smiling too hard. "We're live streaming," she says, excited. Comments are already going crazy. "People are calling you fearless." Elena's mouth lifts slightly. "People love a word," she says. The coordinator blinks, not sure what she means, then laughs politely and moves on. Elena steps to the curtain and peeks out. The audience isn't a sea of 20-year-old faces. It's a tapestry of love saw lines, worried lines, eyes that have watched children grow, parents die, careers rise and fall. People who know what it costs to keep going. She's relieved by it, and a little humbled. Her name is announced. Applause rolls in warm, not hungry. Elena walks on stage and sits in a chair beside a small table with a glass of water. The moderator introduces her with bullet points: former runway icon, campaign face, viral moment, redefinition of beauty. Elena listens, then leans toward the mic. "Can I start somewhere else?" she asks. The moderator nods, surprised. Elena looks at the audience. She doesn't smile for cameras. She doesn't widen her eyes for charm. She speaks like she's talking to one person who needs it. "I used to think success was being untouched," she says. "Like a new car. Like a perfect apple. No bruises." A few people laugh softly, not at her, with her. Elena continues. "I spent money like it was oxygen. $50,000 once, just to chase a version of my face that didn't exist anymore." She pauses, lets that land without drama. "And the saddest part, I thought that was normal." The room goes quiet, not uncomfortable, attentive. Elena wraps both hands around her teacup, grounding herself. "In Maine," she says, "I watched a man playing wood. He told me the prettiest grain comes from the years a tree had to fight for light." She scans the audience slowly. "And I realized something. I'd been sanding myself down for decades. Erasing the rings, calling every mark a mistake." She lifts her gaze steady. "So here's my definition now," she says. "Success is not convincing the world you never suffered. Success is standing in your truth after you have." The moderator shifts, moved, and asks gently, "What changed you?" Elena's voice softens. "A look," she says. "My husband looked at me like I was outdated." She doesn't name him, doesn't give him power, and I thought that look was my fault. She takes a sip, sets the cup down with a small clear click. "But it wasn't a verdict," she sighs. "It was a mirror. It showed me what kind of love it accepted." The audience is still. You can hear someone breathe in. A chair creak. The faint buzz of the live stream cameras. Elena leans into that quiet like it's sacred. "Wrinkles," she says, "are not the enemy. They are proof your face has held your life. Your laughter, your grief, your nights you survive even when you didn't feel strong. A man in the front row nods, eyes wet. A woman grips her friend's hand. Elena's throat tightens, but she doesn't let it turn into performance. In my old life, she says, I thought time was something to outrun. Now I think time is something to own. She smiles, then smiles genuine. Because the truth is, she says, you don't get to be 58 without winning a few wars. The applause that follows isn't loud like fashion applause. It's deeper, it lasts. After the talk, people line up not for selfies like trophies, but to speak quietly. A woman with silver hair and a soft scarf says, I stopped being photographed after 45. I thought I was done. Elena takes her hand. You're not done, Elena says. You're finally becoming unignorable. Another woman admits, both shaking, I've been calling myself ugly for years. Elena holds her gaze. Don't talk to yourself like that, she says simply. Not after everything you've carried. Outside, later, Elena walks alone for a moment, city lights reflecting in puddles like broken mirrors. She catches her reflection's texture, the reality of time. And she feels something that used to be impossible in this city, gratitude. Because success, she realizes, isn't a lie polished until it shines. Success is the quiet strength of telling the truth and living like you mean it. Maine is waiting the way it always waits. Not excited, not offended, not impressed. Just there, a gray sky, salt air, the long hush of water moving in and out like a body that knows how to breathe. Elena steps out of the car with a small bag over her shoulder. No suitcase the size of a life. No garment bags. No just-in-case outfits. Julian is by the porch, sanding a piece of wood with slow, even strokes. He looks up as she walks toward him. No surprise, no big reunion. Just a steady, familiar presence like the tide. You're back, he says. Elena nods. Yeah, she replies. I am. Julian sets the sandpaper down, wipes his hands on his jeans. He doesn't ask for details right away. He doesn't ask for a performance of what she learned. He steps aside and opens the door wider. Inside, the house smells the same old pine tea, a hint of ocean that sneaks into everything. Elena puts the kettle on out of habit. The flame catches with a soft whoomph. She stands there for a moment, listening. The smallest sounds feel louder here, water filling metal, a spoon tapping the rim of a cup, the kettle beginning its low, patient hiss. Julian sits at the table, watching her without staring, as if he's learned the difference between looking and taking. You okay? He asks the same simple question as before. Elena pours water over tea leaves, watching the color bloom, amber spreading, slow and inevitable. She sets 2 mugs down. Her fingers don't tremble. I'm cleared, she says. Julian takes his mug. The ceramic is warm against his palms. He nods once, accepting the answer without forcing it open. Outside, the ocean keeps talking. Elena walks to the porch with her tea. Julian follows. They sit side by side on the steps, shoulders not touching, but close enough to share warmth if they wanted. The wind teases Elena's hair. She doesn't pin it down. She doesn't control every strand. She lets it move like grass. For a long time, neither of them speaks. Silence here isn't awkward. It's earned. Elena watches the water. Waves roll and wrinkle, fold, collapse, then pull back. The surface is never smooth, and Stillite keeps finding it. She smiles, almost to herself. Julian notices. What? Elena tilts her head slightly, eyes on the horizon. In New York, she says, I thought my face was a negotiation. Julian's brow lifts, small curiosity. Elena continues, voice quiet, steady. I thought if I stayed polished enough it'd be safe. She takes a sip. The tea tastes like heat and herbs and something grounding. But safety bought with a lie is still a cage. Julian exhales through his nose, a soft sound like agreement. Elena turns her mug slowly in her hands, watching the sunlight catch the curve of ceramic. I stood on a runway again, she says. And the strangest thing happened. Julian waits. Elena's gaze doesn't waver. I didn't feel like they were looking at my beauty, she says. I felt like they were looking at my proof. Julian nods once, as if that makes perfect sense. Proof of what? He asks. Elena looks down at her hands, faint creases, the tiny scars, the lines that used to disgust her. That I lived, she says simply. A gull cries overhead. The ocean answers. The house creaks behind them, old wood shifting the way bodies shift when they settle into comfort. Elena lifts a hand to the corner of her eye. She feels the wrinkle there, soft, real, inevitable. Once she would have called it damage. Now, she calls it victory. She turns slightly, catching her reflection in the shallow puddle on the porch step, rainwater left from last night. The image trembles with every breeze. No sharp mirror, no harsh light. Just her, held by moving water. Elena's voice softens into something almost like reverence. I used to fight every line, she says. Like time was an enemy and my skin was the battlefield. Julian's gaze stays on the ocean. His voice, when it comes, is plain. And now, Elena breathes in the salt air. She tastes the sea. She tastes space. Now I think the lines are where the light goes, she says. Wood grain, water wrinkles. The ringed years. She smiled a small, complete. I don't want to be smooth anymore. I want to be true. Julian's hand shifts on his mug, a quiet tap of ceramic against wood. That's a good one, he says. Elena laughs softly. Not the bright laugh she used to weaponize. Something lower, warmer, real. They sit as the day moves. The sun lowers, turning the water into hammered silver. The waves keep coming, patient as always. Elena watches them and feels her body unclench in places she didn't know were tight. And then, like a closing thought she doesn't need to force, Elena speaks almost to the ocean. Almost to herself. Real beauty, she says, isn't how much youth you kept. Julian looks at her now. Elena meets his gaze calm. It's how brightly you live, she finishes. The kettle inside clicks as it cools. The porch wood creaks under their weight. A final wave rolls in and breaks, soft and steady. And Elena, unfiltered, unarmored, sits in the sound of it, smiling at the proof on her face like it's a map that finally led her home. This story isn't really about fashion or age, or even betrayal. It's about the quiet violence of learning to speak to ourselves with contempt and the radical courage it takes to stop. Elena believed, as many of us were taught, that time was something to outrun. That youth was a currency. That wrinkles were warnings. So she did what the world rewards. She paid, she polished, she erased. And still, it wasn't enough. Because no amount of perfection can make you feel safe when your worth depends on staying untouched. What changed her wasn't applause. It wasn't a comeback. It was attention, the kind that listens instead of evaluates. Wood grain taught her what mirrors never could, that pressure creates pattern, not failure. That years don't ruin us, they reveal us. That cracks are not evidence of weakness, but of survival. And maybe that's the hardest truth of all. We don't fear aging because of what it does to our bodies. We fear it because it threatens the lies we were told about value. So here's the question this story leaves us with. When did you first learn to be cruel to yourself about time? Who taught you that looking older meant becoming less? Was it a glance that lingered too briefly? A comment disguised as concern? A mirror that slowly stopped feeling like home? And just as important, what part of your story have you been trying to sand down? A scar, a season, a choice? Because you were told it made you harder to love? If you're listening to this and feeling something stir, a memory, a regret, a quiet pride you've never named, we'd like to hear it. Share your story with us. The moment you realized a line on your face wasn't defeat, but proof. The season that shaped you instead of breaking you. The day you stopped negotiating your worth. You can write to us anonymously if you wish, because someone else is listening right now, believing they're alone in this. And they're not. If there's one truth Elena leaves behind, it's this. Real beauty is not about how much youth you managed to keep. It's about how fully you stayed present for your life. Every ring, every wrinkle, every wave that brought you here. Thank you for listening.